Lunchtime News.
Hard choices and short-term political pain. The new Chancellor on the challenges ahead for the country. Rachel Reeves confirmed her focus is on building houses to kickstart economic growth, but that all comes with a cost.
How prepared are we to make the hard choices and face down the vested interests? How willing even to risk short-term political pain to fix Britain's foundations?
Also this lunchtime, what now for France after the election result no one saw coming sees no one in charge? Could Boeing now avoid a criminal trial over the two fatal 737 MAX crashes? Surviving a shark attack, the Texan woman who said her family holiday turned into a horror movie. And an ice cream float with a difference, the van that was washed out to sea in Cornwall.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hussain.
Good afternoon. And so it really begins for the new government. The new MPs have arrived in Westminster. The new Chancellor has made her first big speech. Rachel Reeves says economic growth will be Labour's national mission and she wants to get Britain building again. The government will bring back housing targets with a promise to build 1.5 million new homes within 5 years. But her ambition came with a warning. She said what she has seen over the past 72 hours has confirmed that the party has inherited the worst set of economic circumstances since the Second World War. She questioned whether the country was willing to endure short-term political pain to fix Britain's foundations. Here's our political correspondent, Libby Vina.
The government's changed and so has Parliament, with 334 new MPs who've never been here before.
It's a bit like going back to school, so there's a lot of us walking around trying to find our way around, asking direction, but it's also very much about induction.
Very, very excited, but also it's a huge responsibility. I'm here for 75,000 people in Truro and Falmouth.
I'm the parliamentary candidate. I'm the MP for Camborne and Redruth in Cornwall.
For some, hard to take in, they'd won. But the new Prime Minister was already on his second day touring the United Kingdom, meeting leaders in Northern Ireland and talking up the chances of a new deal with the EU.
You're right to say that we want to improve relations with the EU. We think we can get a better deal than the botched deal that Boris Johnson brought home.
The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, meanwhile, was announcing new house-building targets, but she said Labour faced a dire inheritance.
I have repeatedly warned that whoever won the general election would inherit the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War. What I have seen in the past 72 hours has only confirmed that.
She went on to make this pledge.
I am taking immediate action to deliver this Labour government's mission to kickstart economic growth and to take the urgent steps necessary to build the infrastructure that we need, including 1.5 million homes in the next 5 years. The system needs a new signal. This is that signal.
The Conservatives warned that it could be the green light for building on the green belt.
This is part of the conundrum that is the Labour Party. They talk in one breath about devolving responsibility. At the same time, they have a top-down approach to this, commanding people to build more houses in their communities, which will mean concreting over large swathes of the green belt.
Just 121 Tory MPs remain. For many today, a sobering moment.
Well, I've been in opposition before, so I know it's a very frustrating experience, because with a majority this size, the government is likely to win every single vote. That doesn't mean that we mustn't still make the case and argue against them when we think they're getting things wrong.
The future now, it seems, belongs to Labour. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
Let's join our economics editor, Joel Hills, who's at the Treasury where the Chancellor made her speech. Joel, the government talking tough on planning. Will it work?
I think we should be clear, Nina, that the plans, if the new government can reform the planning system in the way it intends to, it's really quite radical stuff. If the new government can deliver not just more new homes, but more homes where they are needed, if it can find a way of fast-tracking the sort of investment opportunities that the economy needs, things like wind farms, solar farms, I don't know, data centres, roads, railways, tunnels, for example, then there's absolutely no doubt that economic growth will be lifted, potentially really quite significantly, and that could lift living standards. The problem is Labour can't do all these things without upsetting people, and potentially quite a number of people. Now, Rachel Reeves today was talking about mandatory housing targets for councils, ending the ban of onshore wind developments, allowing councils to build on the green belt, as you heard in Libby's report. It will also call in projects deemed of national importance and basically ramrod them through if it feels it needs to. There will be resistance, and Rachel Reeves today was saying she is ready for that fight. As she put it, we have a mandate to get things done, and Labour's going to.
She said, Joel, that Labour's mission, national mission, is to deliver the economic growth that you were talking about. When do you think people will actually start to feel better off?
But Nina, she was asked exactly that question, and it won't surprise you to know that she dodged it entirely. Look, I think if you look at what's happened to inflation, it's cooled, prices are rising faster, pay is rising faster than prices again, and there's the prospect of interest rate cuts on the horizons. There are reasons to be optimistic. What we need to see, and what Labour's been clear about in its manifesto, is we need to significantly raise growth and with it living standards. Now, Labour promises to do this, but today she was also sounding the alarm about the state of the public finances, saying that she'd asked the Treasury to present to Parliament in the next 2 weeks just how bad it all is. Expectation is being managed.
Joel Hills, thank you very much. Thank you. As we've seen, the Prime Minister is continuing his tour of the UK nations. He's been at Stormont, meeting leaders of the power-sharing executive, as well as with representatives from the main political parties. UTV's political editor, Tracy McGee, joins me now from Belfast. Tracy, how has this visit gone down?
Well, the Prime Minister was here at Stormont for an early morning meeting with the First and Deputy First Ministers Michelle O'Neill and Emma Little-Pengelly before travelling the short distance here to Parliament buildings, where he met with the main political parties. His message today, it was all about resetting relationships, working collaboratively and respectfully, he said. Now, what was remarkable was after the meetings, all the leaders of all shades of politics here, unionist and nationalist, seemed happy.
I think the relationships with Keir Starmer will be incredibly positive. He is somebody that knows Northern Ireland.
We are very conscious that, 26 years ago, a British Labour government was at the heart of striking the Good Friday Agreement. We want this British government to be at the heart of honouring that agreement.
This is a Prime Minister in a honeymoon period who seems to have a lot of goodwill from the politicians here, but some of that gloss may wear off as conversations around public sector funding get down to detail. There's also questions as to whether or not the government can reset relations with the EU, a big issue here because post-Brexit trading relations have caused a lot of political instability, and there's also increased calls for a border poll on a united Ireland after Sinn Féin, the largest nationalist party here, became the biggest party at Westminster. Northern Ireland is something of a political minefield for Prime Ministers, but Sir Keir Starmer has experience of working here in Northern Ireland, and today he proved himself nimble on his feet with the rare ability of keeping all sides on board. Let's see if it lasts.
Tracy, thank you very much. Thank you. The Prime Minister has now moved on from Northern Ireland and is in Wales right now. He's been holding talks there with the First Minister Vaughan Gething in Cardiff, all part of his pledge to reset relations with the nations. Ahead of Sir Keir Starmer's visit, the Plaid Cymru leader and his party's 4 MPs requested a meeting with the Prime Minister. Today is the start of the first full week at work for the new government, and there is plenty to do. More teachers are top of the list. The new Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, will meet teaching unions this week. The government wants to boost schools by trying to recruit 6,500 new teachers. And the new Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is holding talks with the British Dental Association as work to resolve the massive backlog of NHS appointments begins. And he's set to begin negotiations with the British Medical Association too. That's scheduled for tomorrow, with hopes of a deal to end the long-running junior doctors' strikes. Let's return to Libby in Westminster. Libby, the government in full swing with many, many challenges ahead. What about the Conservatives? Any updates on Rishi Sunak's potential replacement and his shadow cabinet?
Well, on Friday, Rishi Sunak said that he was prepared to stay on as an interim leader while they decided on a future leader. But I've spoken to one former minister today who suggested that that was not the case. He believed that Rishi Sunak would want to stand down and hand over to someone else who could act as an interim leader while a leadership contest gets underway. I have to say, speaking to some of the MPs who've been arriving at Westminster today, the Tory MPs, they do seem to be shell-shocked, and I think the consensus is that they need to take their time before choosing the next leader, before deciding which direction the party is going to go in. There were a couple of potential front-runners out on the airwaves yesterday, Robert Jenrick and Victoria Atkins, but they do represent quite different wings of the party, and I think MPs will want to look very, very closely at the two choices that they put to the wider Conservative membership before the contest goes ahead. They do think that perhaps that they got this very wrong when Liz Truss emerged as the leader and Prime Minister back in 2022.
Libby Vina, thank you. A barrage of Russian missiles has hit cities across Ukraine, killing at least 22 people and injuring 68 more. The Children's Hospital in Kyiv was struck in the bombardment. Ukraine's largest children's medical centre has been crucial in supporting some of the sickest children from across the country and suffered extensive damage. The daylight attacks, including the use of hypersonic missiles by the Russians, which is one of its most advanced weapons, according to the Ukrainian Air Force. It can fly at 10 times the speed of sound, making it hard to intercept. And the war in Ukraine is just one of the pressing issues the new government here and a gridlocked parliament in France will have to deal with in the coming days and months. The French are in political limbo after a shock result saw no party win an outright majority in the elections. The far right, led by Marine Le Pen, was defeated. The Prime Minister said he would resign, but that offer has been rejected by the French president. Our Europe editor, James Mates, joins us now from Paris. James, what happens now, especially with just 18 days to go until the city hosts the Olympics?
Yeah, well, I think that's why they persuaded the former Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal, to stay on. I mean, less than 3 weeks till France hosts the world, and it needs to have some sort of government in place. President Macron's problem is that he asked the French people two questions. One, do you want the far right to govern you? And he got a clear answer to that, no. But question two, so who do you want to govern you? And he didn't get an answer to that at all. He's trying to deal with some broad left coalition that doesn't even have a majority. I mean, it's as if in Britain a coalition of the Communists, the Socialist Workers' Party, Labour and the Greens, under the leadership of Jeremy Corbyn, was demanding the right to form a government despite having nowhere near a majority in Parliament. I mean, no analogy is perfect, obviously, but it gives you an idea of the sort of mess that he's trying to deal with. It doesn't mean there's no way out of this, because there's a considerable incentive. Marine Le Pen said last night, look, we didn't win this time, we will win next time. And I think people know that could well be true, particularly if there's a year of chaos ahead, which would absolutely play into her hands. From a British point of view, very difficult for Keir Starmer at exactly the moment that he would like to establish great relations with France, reset them rather, to deal with all sorts of important issues, not least of which migration in the small boats, and suddenly he's in a position where there's really no one to deal with here.
James Mates, thank you very much. Thank you. Still ahead this lunchtime, holiday horror, the woman who survived a shark attack. And here, the summer washout, it continues. First, could the airline giant Boeing avoid a criminal trial over two fatal plane crashes? Both involved 737 MAX jets. The US Justice Department says Boeing has agreed to plead guilty to a criminal fraud charge. But lawyers for some of the relatives who died in the crashes say they'll ask the judge to reject the deal. Our correspondent Neil Connery is here. Take us through this quite complicated development.
Well, you'll remember that Boeing has been in crisis over safety since these two near-identical crashes involving 737 MAX aircraft back in 2018 and 19. In 2021, Boeing was charged with conspiracy to defraud regulators over allegations that it had deceived them. Now, you'll remember that a Boeing 737 MAX operated by Indonesia's Lion Air crashed in October 2018, shortly after takeoff, killing all 189 people on board. Then, months later, an Ethiopian Airlines plane crashed outside Addis Ababa, killing all 157 people. Now, the flight control system on that 737 MAX and the one in the crash before was implicated. Now, despite agreeing to increase monitoring and reporting in return for not being prosecuted after those two crashes, Boeing then faced another incident. In January this year, one of their planes operated by Alaska Airlines saw a door panel blow out soon after takeoff, forcing the jet to land. Now, today, Boeing has agreed to plead guilty to criminal fraud conspiracy after breaking the original deal done with the US Department of Justice in 2021. It means it will avoid a trial and pay a criminal fine of £190 million. But as you say that families of those who died have criticised this news, they say it allows Boeing to avoid full responsibility for the deaths.
Neil Connery, thank you very much. Thank you. The parents of a 14-year-old girl who was allegedly stabbed have appeared in court charged with her murder. Simon Vickers, who's 48, and Sarah Hall, who's 44, made a short appearance at Newton Aycliffe Magistrates Court. Court papers showed they are accused of murdering Scarlett Vickers on Friday. And hundreds of people living in South Devon have been told their tap water is finally safe to drink. Residents in parts of Brixham were having to boil their water nearly 8 weeks after a parasite was found in supplies. They will now no longer need to do that. A woman whose family survived a shark attack in America has described how her Independence Day holiday turned into a horror movie. Tabitha Sullivan described how she saw something huge and grey in the water before it attacked her. She is now recovering in hospital. Sejal Karia on her shock and story of survival.
This was the shark lurking in shallow water that officials said attacked 4 people near a beach on an island off the southern tip of Texas. One of them, Mum Tabitha Sullivan, who spoke of the terrifying moment it grabbed her leg.
There were about 4 of us in the water. I had some teenagers with me. My daughter, 15, was with me as well. Sorry. All I saw was something gray in the water. So I kicked at it because I thought, oh my God, it's a huge fish. And it was coming at us. So I kicked at it, and that's when I think it grabbed my leg.
Her husband, Carey, she says, jumped into the water trying to fight off the shark, but it followed them and then attacked him.
He fought the shark. He's got 2 bites on him. He's actually in the room with me. He's next to me. It was crazy. Kind of surreal still.
Beachgoers went to Tabitha's rescue, pulling her from the water. She'll need multiple operations, but doctors believe she'll be able to keep her leg and walk again.
I have movement in my ankle. My bone structure is good. I'm going to probably need physical therapy for sure.
And the couple weren't the only ones to fall victim to the shark. It attacked again and again, and authorities began patrolling the beach, warning people to stay out of the water.
As I understand it right now, we had 4 total attacks. It's believed that it probably was all with one shark. They all look like where he's just trying to find, or it's trying to find something to eat. He takes a bite, doesn't like it, and he moves on.
A helicopter kept a tab on the shark by flying very low until it swam away to deeper water. Tabitha Sullivan and her family say they feel lucky to be alive. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
Finally back here, if you feel like you've had a washout summer so far, this might be the story for you. Yesterday afternoon, rather than having a queue of holidaymakers wanting a 99, an ice cream van in Newquay was swept out to sea. Thankfully, no one was on board, so no one was injured as the Cornish van was tossed around in the ocean. Here's Sally Biddle.
If you were hoping for a refreshing ice cream to punctuate the gap between sun and showers, you may want to try somewhere other than Harlyn Bay in North Cornwall. This was the local ice cream van yesterday evening. Caught by a rising tide, it was swept off the beach and into the waves, bobbing around, well, like a vanilla float. Those on the beach had quite the adventure, making a quick TikTok to share their bizarre holiday encounter. Others tried to help by pushing the van free from the sand, but it was wedged and the tide was coming in fast.
It was a bit dramatic. The lifeguard called out saying that the ice cream van was was stuck, so he was asking people to go and help push it and see if we can get it out.
It was quite surreal to see it, and to see the crowd that built up to watch as well. There was quite a few people watching, and they had the Coast Guard here and multiple services helping as well. So yeah, it was quite a long evening for them as well.
Thankfully, no one was inside the van at the time and no one was hurt. And shortly before 10 o'clock, a happy ending when a recovery tractor towed the ice cream truck out of the sea at low tide. Sally Biddulph, ITV News.
That's it this lunchtime. Mary's back with all the latest on the ITV Evening News at 6:30 from me and everyone on the team today. Bye-bye.
Everywhere will be lovely and warm today. You might